The glow of the triple monitors was the only light in the cavernous loft, a digital sun that never set for Elara Vance. Outside, the city of San Francisco was a tapestry of twinkling lights and distant, humming life. But in here, the only pulse that mattered was the one she had built herself. It was the pulse of Kairos, the dating app that had promised, and in many ways delivered, a revolution in human connection. On her main screen, a cascade of data flowed, a beautiful, endless river of human longing quantified into binary code. User engagement rates, compatibility percentages, message response times. Elara was the architect of this digital Eden, but she was its most disillusioned inhabitant. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, executing a command with a sharp, final tap. On the screen, a user profile, Jason27, dissolved into nothingness. A fake. A scammer. Another ghost in the machine she had to manually exorcise. Another one? A voice chirped from the doorway. Leo, her lead engineer and the only person who dared interrupt her after 10 p.m., leaned against the frame holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He was the Ian to her yang, where she was all sharp angles, dark, severe bobs, and a wardrobe of uncompromising black. He was soft sweaters, unruly curls, and an optimism that Elara found both baffling and essential. His profile picture was a stock photo of a fireman. A fireman Leo. Who falls for that? Elara sighed, accepting the mug. The rich, bitter scent was a small comfort. Lonely people, Leo said simply, his gaze softening. Hopeful people. You used to be one of them, remember? That's why you built this. That was the great, unspoken irony of Elara Vance. She had built Kairos, named after the Greek god of the opportune moment, in the fiery aftermath of her own heartbreak. She had believed, with the fervent passion of a 20-something tech visionary, that love wasn't magic, it was a data problem waiting to be solved. Kairos wasn't just about swiping on photos. It was about core values, communication styles, long-term goals, the subtle, unspoken languages of the soul that could be decoded through a sophisticated series of prompts, games, and psychological assessments. It had made her a millionaire, a headline, a disruptor. And it had left her utterly empty. Hope is a flawed variable, she muttered, taking a sip of coffee. It introduces irrationality into the most perfect system. I'm running a final diagnostic on the new Integrity Shield algorithm. It should flag these profiles before they even reach a user's feed. You can't algorithm away human deceit, Leo said gently. Sometimes I think you're trying to build a fortress around this app because you've built one around yourself. Elara shot him a look, but it lacked its usual venom. He was right and they both knew it. For all her data, for all her code that could predict with 85% accuracy whether 2 people would last beyond a third date, she hadn't been on one herself in over a year. The well of her own hope had run dry, poisoned by the constant exposure to the underbelly of modern romance. The liars, the cheaters, the emotionally unavailable, all laid bare in her dashboards. The world doesn't need another hookup app, Leo. It needs a place for real connection. I just have to keep patching the holes to keep the cynics from sinking it. She turned back to her screen, her reflection a pale, serious ghost in the dark glass. Run the diagnostic. I'm going home. But home was just a quieter, darker version of her office. As she rode the elevator down to the silent, empty garage, Leo's words echoed in her mind. Hopeful people. Was she ever truly one of them? Or had her creation merely been a grand, elaborate attempt to control the very chaos that had shattered her once? Later, in her minimalist apartment, she did something she hadn't done in months. She opened the Kairos app on her personal phone. Not as a developer but as a user. Profile, Elara. Age 31. Bio, founder. Skeptic. Looking for the exception. It was a lie, of course. She wasn't looking. But a perverse, weary part of her needed to see it, the ecosystem she had created from the inside. She scrolled through the curated faces. The entrepreneurs with their disruptive energy, the artists with their carefully crafted vulnerability. It all felt like a performance. She was about to close the app, reaffirmed in her disillusionment, when a notification popped up. Kairos has found a match. She almost dismissed it. A glitch. It had to be. Her settings were stringent, her filters maxed out. But then she saw his profile. Gil. Age 33. Profession, narrative designer for interactive media. His photos weren't the typical gym selfies or mountaintop shots. One was of him laughing, his head thrown back in a dusty, sun-drenched bookstore. Another showed his hands, stained with ink, working on what looked like a complex mechanical keyboard. His eyes, a startling shade of sea green even through the screen, held a quiet intensity. But it was his bio that snagged her like a hook in her core. Believe the world is made of stories, not data. Looking for a co-author. It was a direct challenge. A refutation of her entire life's work. And it was the most compelling thing she had seen in years. Her thumb, acting on an impulse that bypassed her cynical brain, hovered over the message button. She didn't type a generic, "Hey." Instead, she typed the first thing that came to her mind, a line that felt both dangerous and inevitable. "Elara, what's the first line of our story then?" She put the phone down, her heart beating a strange, frantic rhythm against her ribs. It was just an app. He was just a man. A string of data points. But for the first time in a long, long time, the data felt alive. Caleb's reply came an hour later, just as Elara was convincing herself she had made a terrible mistake. Caleb, the programmer and the storyteller, walked into a bar. It sounds like the start of a bad joke, but the programmer didn't believe in jokes, only probabilities. And the probability of them understanding each other was statistically insignificant. A smile, genuine and unforced, touched Elara's lips. It was clever. Self-aware. It acknowledged the inherent tension in their bios. Their conversation unfolded not like a typical online exchange, but like a long, meandering walk through a shared mental landscape. They debated the merits of Hemingway versus Fitzgerald. He confessed a love for building intricate, clockwork-like puzzles. She admitted, to her own surprise, a secret passion for baking sourdough, a process that defied perfect algorithmic control. He was witty without being cruel, intelligent without being arrogant. He asked questions, real questions, about what she wanted, what she feared, what made her feel truly alive. It was intoxicating. And for Elara, the master of the system, it felt utterly, terrifyingly real. She found herself looking forward to his messages, the ping of her phone sending a jolt of anticipation through her. She ran his photos through her own reverse image search tools. They were clean. No digital footprint except a sparse LinkedIn profile confirming his job at a small, reputable gaming studio. "You're glowing," Leo remarked one afternoon, a week into the digital courtship. "It's disturbing. Did you finally sleep? Or did you replace your blood with espresso?" "I've been talking to someone," Elara said, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. Leo's eyes widened. "On Kairos? You're using the app?" "Elara, that's huge. It's just talking. His name is Caleb. He's a narrative designer." Leo's celebratory expression faltered for a fraction of a second. "Caleb? That's interesting. What's his last name?" "Thorne." "Why?" Leo busied himself with a stack of papers on her desk. "No reason. Just be careful, okay? The integrity shield is still in beta. There are always bugs." "He's not a bug, Leo," Elara said, a defensive edge to her voice she hadn't expected. "He's different." That was the understatement of the century. Caleb Thorne felt like an oasis in her desert of data. He was the human element her algorithm was supposed to find, the exception that proved the rule. And she, the high priestess of logic, was falling for it. For him. They agreed to meet. A simple coffee shop, neutral ground. Elara dressed with a care she hadn't exercised in years, choosing a deep emerald green sweater that complemented her dark hair and made her feel, for once, like a woman and not a CEO. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with a battered leather journal open before him. He was more handsome in person, the photos failing to capture the quiet solidity of his presence, the intelligence in those sea-green eyes. When he looked up and saw her, his smile was slow and genuine, reaching his eyes and creating tiny crinkles at their corners. "Elara," he said, his voice a warm, resonant baritone. "You're exactly how I imagined." "And how was that?" she asked, sliding into the seat opposite him. "Brilliant. A little intimidating. And beautiful." The directness of the compliment disarmed her. For 2 hours the world outside the coffee shop ceased to exist. They talked, and it was even better than their messages. The conversation flowed effortlessly from the mundane to the profound. He listened, truly listened, his focus entirely on her. He made her laugh. He made her think. He made her feel seen, not as the creator of Kairos, but as Elara. It was perfect. Too perfect. As they were leaving, stepping out into the crisp afternoon air, his hand brushed against hers. A simple, accidental touch, but it sent a current through her, a jolt of pure, unprocessed feeling. "I'd like to see you again," Caleb said, his gaze holding hers. "Soon." "I'd like that too," Elara heard herself say. She walked away, her head spinning, her heart a wild, fluttering thing in her chest. It was working. Her system, her beautiful, flawed, magnificent system, had actually worked. For her. Back in her office, giddy and distracted, she decided to do something she never did. She pulled up his user data on the back end of Kairos, a guilty thrill running through her. She just wanted to see the numbers, to see the beautiful, quantifiable proof of their compatibility. The system had given them a 92% match. Almost perfect. But as she scrolled through the raw data logs, her smile froze. Something was off. His login patterns were peculiar. They originated from a cluster of IP addresses that were not residential but commercial. Specifically, they were registered to a co-working tech hub across the city. The same hub that housed. Her blood ran cold. Nexus Studios. Kairos's most direct, most vicious competitor. A company known for its aggressive tactics and its charismatic, ruthless founder, a man who had publicly denounced Kairos as a sterile laboratory that murdered the poetry of love. A man she had never met in person, but whose name was a curse in her office. Alexander Thorne. Thorne. Caleb Thorne. Alexander Thorne. The pieces, sharp and cruel, clicked into place. The narrative designer. The perfect storybook romance. The direct challenge to her philosophy. It wasn't a meet-cute. It was a corporate espionage plot. He wasn't trying to co-author a story, he was trying to steal her code, expose her flaws and destroy her life's work. The giddy joy curdled into a hard, cold knot of betrayal in her stomach. Leo's warning echoed in her mind. Be careful. She had been so much more than careless. She had been a fool. The master of the system, utterly defeated by the oldest story in the book. The next few days were a study in controlled fury. Elara moved through her life like a ghost, her interactions with Caleb, Alexander, becoming a carefully orchestrated performance. She continued their conversations, her messages dripping with a feigned affection that tasted like ash in her mouth. She agreed to a second date, all the while digging deeper into the digital trail he had left. She discovered a tiny hidden script embedded in his profile, a data siphon designed to feed her integrity shield algorithms back to a server at Nexus. He wasn't just after her heart, he was after her crown jewels, the very technology that made Kairos secure and unique. The betrayal was a physical pain, a constant, gnawing ache beneath her sternum. It was more than professional sabotage. He had seen into the most vulnerable, hidden parts of her. He had made her hope again, only to show her that her hope was her greatest weakness. She confronted Leo in the server room, the humming racks of machinery bearing witness to her quiet rage. You knew, she accused, her voice low and shaking. You knew who he was. Leo looked down, his face pale. I suspected. The name Thorne, it's not common. I ran a background check after you told me. His corporate photo is on the Nexus website. Zimel. I tried to warn you. You should have stopped me. And how would I have done that? You were finally happy. I don't know what I thought. Maybe that he was different from his company's reputation. He's worse, Elara whispered, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a profound weariness. He's a storyteller, Leo. And he weaved a story just for me. The one story I was desperate to believe. She had a choice. She could expose him publicly, unleash a legal and media firestorm that would destroy his reputation and likely sink Nexus. It would be the logical, the safe move. But another idea, born of a deeper, more personal hurt, began to form. A more narrative approach. She would turn his own story against him. She would give him exactly what he was looking for. The second date was at an upscale cocktail bar, a place of soft lighting and intimate booths. Elara dressed to kill in a little black dress that was both armor and bait. She saw the appreciative flicker in Alexander's, Caleb's, eyes as she approached, and she used the surge of anger it provoked to fuel her performance. You look stunning, he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. His scent, sandalwood and something indefinably warm, was a cruel mockery of her memory. So do you, she replied, her smile a brilliant, practiced lie. She played her part perfectly. She was charming, vulnerable, and brilliantly insightful. She steered the conversation toward Kairos, feigning a moment of professional weakness. Sometimes I wonder if I've made a mistake, she confessed, swirling the ice in her glass, her eyes downcast. The new integrity shield, it's a monster. It's so complex. I found a potential backdoor in the code just yesterday. A tiny, almost insignificant vulnerability. If the wrong person found it, they could access our entire user database. I'm patching it tomorrow. She saw the predator-like focus sharpen in his gaze, though his face remained a mask of concern. That sounds serious. You must be under so much pressure. It's immense, she sighed, laying a hand on his arm. But talking to you, it's the only thing that makes me feel sane, Caleb. You have no idea. The lie was a poison on her tongue, but she savored it. She was writing his downfall into the script of their romance. The trap was set. She had given him the time, the location of the fictional backdoor, and the motivation to act fast. All she had to do was wait. Back at her office, she and Leo set up a digital honeypot. They created a fake, isolated server containing a decoy version of the Integrity Shield code, complete with the vulnerability she had described. They then monitored it, their screens a tense, silent vigil. Hours passed. The city slept. Elara felt a strange sense of calm, the eye of her emotional hurricane. This was a language she understood. Code. Action and reaction. Cause and effect. Then at 2:17 a.m. the alarms flashed. A user, masking their IP through several layers of proxies, was attempting to access the honeypot. They were good. Very good. But not good enough to evade the traps Elara had laid specifically for them. The digital fingerprints were a perfect match for the script she'd found in Caleb's profile. He had taken the bait. He was in. Elara's fingers flew across the keyboard, tracing the connection, peeling back the layers of anonymity until the source IP was revealed, clear and undeniable. It was the direct, hard-lined connection from Alexander Thorne's penthouse apartment. She had him. Cold. A single hot tear of vindication and profound sorrow traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. It's done, Leo said quietly from behind her. The log is airtight. We can send it to our lawyers, the press. No, Elara said, her voice surprisingly steady. Not yet. She opened her personal phone. She opened her messages with Caleb. Elara, I know the ending to our story now. Meet me at my office. Now. He arrived within 40 minutes, his expression a masterful blend of concern and confusion. He was still playing his part. Elara? What's wrong? It's the middle of the night. Her office was dark, lit only by the 3 monitors, which now displayed a single damning screen. The connection log, his name and address highlighted in red. The story's over, Alexander, she said, not turning from the screen. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of the servers. She finally swiveled her chair to face him. The mask of Caleb was gone, replaced by the sharp, calculating features of Alexander Thorne. The warmth in his sea-green eyes had frozen over. Elara, he began, his voice different now, colder, flatter. Save it, she cut him off, standing up. She felt tall, powerful, and utterly broken. Was any of it real? The bookstore? The stories? The co-author? Her voice cracked on the last word, betraying her. He had the decency to look ashamed, but it was fleeting. The initial premise was not, he admitted, his gaze steady. My goal was to expose the flaws in Kairos. Your Integrity Shield is a myth. You market it as impenetrable, but it's as flawed as any other system. I was going to write a white paper on its vulnerabilities. So you thought you'd use me to get them? She spat, the fury returning. You thought you'd seduce the code out of me? It started that way, he said, his eyes searching her face. But then, it became complicated. You were complicated. Brilliant. Fierce. The things you said, the way you thought, that was real, Elara. The connection we had, it stopped being part of the plan. She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Don't you dare. You were in my system an hour ago trying to steal code you thought was vulnerable. You were going to destroy me. I was going to expose a lie, he shot back, his own frustration boiling over. Your entire app is a lie. You promise people a perfect algorithmic love, but you don't believe in it yourself. You're the biggest fraud of all. You built a church for a god you think is dead. His words hit her with the force of a physical blow. They were the mirror image of her own deepest fears, spoken back to her by her enemy. Get out, she whispered, her strength finally failing. Elara, listen to me. Get out, she screamed, the sound raw and torn from her throat. He stared at her for a long moment, a storm of conflicting emotions in his eyes, regret, defiance, and something else, something that looked painfully like the ghost of what she had thought was love. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him with a sound of terrible finality. Elara collapsed into her chair, the sobs she had been holding back finally wrenching free. She had won. She had outsmarted the tech rival, defended her company, proven her intellectual superiority. And she had never felt more defeated in her life. The fallout was both public and private. Elara released a carefully crafted press statement. An attempted security breach by a rival had been identified and neutralized by Kairos' superior technology. She was lauded as a visionary and a fierce protector of user data. Nexus's stock plummeted. Alexander Thorne became a pariah. But the victory was empty. The loft felt more like a prison than ever. She tried to lose herself in work, in code, but the lines of text seemed to mock her. She had proven that her system could defend against an attack, but she had failed to prove it could foster something real. Alexander's final accusation echoed in her mind. You built a church for a god you think is dead. Weeks passed. The sharp pain of betrayal dulled into a constant aching numbness. Leo tried to coax her out of it, but even his optimism had its limits. It was during a late-night session, reviewing the raw, unfiltered feedback from successful Kairos matches, that she found it. A testimonial from a couple now engaged. They talked about their first date, about the awkwardness, the shared laughter, the moment they both realized there was something there. And the woman wrote, "It wasn't the algorithm that made us fall in love. The algorithm just put us in the same room. Gave us the chance. We wrote the story ourselves." The word struck a chord deep within Elara. She had been so focused on perfecting the system, on eliminating all risk and flaw, that she had forgotten its true purpose. It wasn't a guarantee. It was an introduction. A catalyst. A single, curated Kairos moment. She had been trying to algorithm away the very humanity she was trying to connect. And she realized, with a jolt that shook her to her core, that her connection with Alexander, for all its lies and manipulation, had been the most human experience she'd had in years. The anger, the betrayal, the intellectual sparring, the moments of genuine connection that had slipped through the cracks of his deception, it was messy, painful, and utterly devastatingly real. He was right. She was a fraud. She preached data but had been touched by a story. One rainy afternoon, she found herself standing outside the dusty, sun-drenched bookstore from his profile picture. It was his. A small, brass plaque by the door confirmed it. Thorne and Page, proprietor. He wasn't just a narrative designer. He lived stories. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open. A bell chimed. The air smelled of old paper, leather, and coffee. And there he was, standing on a ladder, shelving a book. He looked older, wearier, the shadows under his eyes mirroring her own. He looked down, saw her, and froze. The silence stretched, thick with unsaid things. "I'm not here as the CEO of Kairos," Elara said, her voice quiet but clear in the hushed space. "I'm not here to gloat or to fight." Slowly he descended the ladder. "Then why are you here?" "You were right," she said, meeting his gaze, letting him see the vulnerability there, without the armor of anger or professionalism. "About me. About the app. I built a system to find connection because I was too afraid to risk finding it myself. I was hiding in the code." He watched her, his expression unreadable. "The algorithm isn't the story," she continued, taking a tentative step forward. "It's just the first line. You made me feel the whole messy, painful, beautiful novel. And even though it was built on a lie, some of those pages felt real to me. And I think they felt real to you too." Alexander, Caleb, whoever he was, let out a long, slow breath. The defensive wall in his eyes began to crumble. "They were," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "The plan fell apart the first time I made you laugh. I was there to expose a flaw, Elara. And I did. I just never expected to find it in my own heart." They stood there, separated by a few feet of worn Persian rug and a chasm of betrayal, but connected by a shared, painful truth. "So," she said, her heart hammering against her ribs. "This was a risk no algorithm could calculate. This was a leap of faith. The programmer and the storyteller. It's a terrible start. But maybe we could try writing a second draft? One with no hidden agendas. Just the truth. However messy it is." A slow, genuine smile, the one she remembered from the coffee shop, finally touched his lips. It was hesitant, fragile, but real. "I think that's the best proposal for a first line I've ever heard," he said. It wasn't an ending. It was a complicated, uncertain, and terrifying beginning. But for the first time, Elara Vance wasn't looking for a perfect match. She was ready to write her own story, one messy, human, unpredictable word at a time.